Hey everybody, Plushie here. With the upcoming 5.5 chapter as well as the Douman banner for NA, I want to make a short video talking about why I think this servant is absolutely cracked. And considering how much I like to praise him in my other servant reviews, I guess this is also a perfect opportunity to address why I praise him so much. First and foremost, if you like chaotic evil servants, I think you should definitely try to pick a copy of him up, considering he is the best chaotic evil servant support in the entire game. He gives all chaotic allies a 20% attack up and a 50% crit up, and also to all evil allies a 20% attack up and 50% crit up. But the scary part of this is that these two effects stack, so if he's buffing a servant that is both chaotic and evil, he gives them 100% crit up for 3 turns as well as a 40% attack up for 3 turns. 100% crit ups in this game as a support skill is extremely rare and usually given out pretty sparingly, such as Merlin, who only gives it for a single turn, as well as Scotty, who only gives it to quick cards for 3 turns. The 40% attack up is also really standard in terms of these specific trait buffers, such as Elizabeth Bathory's charisma skill that buffs females by an additional 20% on top of the base 20%. So overall, this is a really powerful unit if you're buffing a chaotic evil servant. In fact, I think his buff is so powerful that even if you only have one trait matching, which means that if your DPS is only chaotic or only evil, it's still pretty worth it. 3 turn 50% crit up is a pretty standard number for generally good crit buffers, and the 20% attack up for 3 turns is a little bit lackluster, but you still have to consider they all benefit from the skill 1 nonetheless. So really powerful, really hard to find a comp that doesn't benefit from him. And if you really want to, you can even force this synergy by bringing servants such as Jacques de Molay, which will come out later next year, or Archer Moriarty to turn your allies into evil trait to match this specific buff. So yeah, really powerful servant, and really versatile and easy to use. Secondly, in my opinion, Douman is the turning point of curse teams becoming actually viable. His skill 1 gives a 500 curse for 3 turns, his skill 3 gives a 2000 curse for 5 turns, and his MP gives a 1000 curse for 5 turns as well as a evil curse that scales from 100% to 200%. Now this is not the only reason he's really good in a curse team though, because he has a lot of skills that actually help this team achieve what they want to do. The biggest fear of a curse team is to have their curses purged by a debuff cleanse effect, and Douman's first skill has a 3-turn terror effect as well as a 3-turn confusion effect, which is a 3-turn chanced proccing skill seal effect. Both prevents that from happening. Douman also has a 80 MP battery, meaning that you don't really have to bring a MP start CE for his MP to proc, or you can bring an MP start CE to use his MP twice very easily. Douman also synergizes really well with curse units in a normal way because a lot of curse units, I guess due to theming, are chaotic evil such as Bavan Shi and Tyra. So if you want to do some actual crit damage with your curse team, you can do that as well. Douman is also really good at 90+ node farming, meaning that nodes that are not 3-turn loopable. Now he actually can 3-turn loop with Double Scotty because of his 80 MP battery. Despite his refund being pretty bad, having an 80 MP charge is really helpful for looping. But where I think Douman really shines in farming is in those 90+ nodes that are not loopable. It's really hard for me to come up with an example of how these nodes are lined up, considering how vastly different they are from one another. However, as a general rule of thumb, you want a DPS that has really big MP charge, so you don't have to charge them with your MP charging support. You want a servant that can both do DPS but also buff your other DPSs, because you're missing a meta support in most of these comps and you don't want your main DPS's damage to fall off by a bunch. And finally, you want a servant that can have really strong crit damage, because a lot of the times you actually rely on face cards to finish off higher HP targeted enemies, and Douman can provide all of that and more. Insta-death is usually a bad meme, but Douman has such good insta-death that it's actually a really viable strat for wave 1 clearing in those 90+ nodes. If you remember all the way back before we get any really good looping comps, people actually love bringing Nidochris in farming teams just to clear wave 1, because she has really high death chance, a 100 MP battery, so she doesn't have to care about MP charge, you don't have to give her a specific CE as well, and just overall she also doesn't have to care about class because she's doing insta-death allowing her to be slotted in every single farming comp. And Douman has an even higher death chance than Nitocris, and he also buffs your entire team. So if you're facing hunting quests with the first wave being a lot of bronze or even silver enemies, Douman can pretty consistently insta-death them. And even when he can't, he can actually push through with his really high base damage as well as his really strong buffs a lot of times, with a few face cards even. So yeah, Douman's really versatile in these farming nodes. You can slot him in any sort of 90 plus farming team just as a super buff Nitocris even, and he'd still be really good. One aspect that I don't see a lot of people talking about is Douman's ability to solo. Now obviously he is not as good as those staple solo monsters such as Tyra or Barghest, but Douman has a lot of tools to actually help him survive and also benefit him in a solo context. Douman's first skill has a 3-turn terror effect, a 3-turn attack down, and a 3-turn confusion, which is a skill seal effect. So that can all help him survive in a solo context. He also has a passive that is basically the Avenger passive that allows him to gain massive amounts of MP when he gets hit, which is really powerful in a solo context considering he's the only one getting hit. Douman also has a double guts that lasts 5 turns that has a 7-turn cooldown. Now, it's kind of unrealistic to expect using that for multiple turns unless you're really good at routing and timing your solo runs, but a single effect of the double guts is already really powerful. It basically guarantees you to live for 2 extra turns, and it stops all enemy actions when they proc the guts as well. And finally, Douman has just really high DPS because he himself is chaotic evil, so he gets 3 turns 100% crit up and 3 turns 40% attack up. So he can actually damage rush the enemies. So yeah, it's really powerful. Obviously not as good in a lot of the cases as these staple solo units, but especially against some fights that has 3 enemies or even rotating gauntlet enemies that you have to go through, such as the Summer 5 CQ, he actually excels pretty hard in solo in those contexts. So overall, Douman is just a really solid servant in general. Imagine if he has his skill set, but his second and third skill is only to himself, he'd still be an extremely solid servant, and that is just how good he is. You'd find it really hard to slot him in a team and him not benefiting anyone, considering how easy it is for his skills to benefit the team in one way or another. Even if you don't have a lot of chaotic evil DPSs and you just really like Douman, he's a really competent DPS on his own, and he can also buff himself a lot if you bring another Douman with you. So don't feel like you shouldn't roll for him just because you don't have a lot of chaotic evil DPSs. And if you do, definitely try to grab a copy of him, because I have used him in almost every team whenever I use a chaotic evil DPS just because of how explosive his buffs are. He's also a little bit similar to Van Gogh in this context, where he's really powerful in a team, but he's also really powerful just on his own or with himself. Obviously, Double Douman is a lot less sustainable compared to Van Gogh, but it's also a lot more explosive because you don't really have to use a non-damaging MP before you start doing damage, and you can just do a bunch of damage straight off the bat. So he is a better farming option compared to Van Gogh, a lot better actually. So anyways, hope you guys enjoyed the video, and good luck on rolling for Douman. I'll see you guys in the next one.